What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Paint Society, the channel where the learning doesn't stop when the video ends. Today we have this beautiful 93 NSX in Formula Red. We're gonna give it a refresh and add some side skirts. Let's take a look. So the project's coming in for a refresh. Now this front end has seen better days. If you look closely, you can see some touch up and some scratching, some pitting along the hood. Coming across the fender, we can see that the fender is a touch darker than the rest of the hood. So what we're going to be doing is repairing the hood, refinishing it, smoothing it out, and we're going to be blending into the fenders. We'll be repainting the headlight covers, the front bumper, and we're adding some side skirts. And the side skirts are a fiberglass aftermarket option, which we will be adding, so we'll take you through that. And actually good quality fiberglass at that, so I'm pretty happy about that. We're gonna let the guys take apart the car and then we'll bring it into the body shop. And now, having all the parts in a body shop, we'll go over why I paint the car in different parts. But first, let's get started on this hood. So this hood, I use a 3M prepping pad, and it's like a firm disc pad that attaches to the DA. And this is gonna help me kind of block out any of those pits or scratches and make sure that it's nice and flat. Now, if this hood was relatively wavy, I would definitely take a block to it, but you know, it's just got minor scratches and minor pitting on it. It's nothing that a DA really can't handle. So what you saw before was 180, and now I switched over to 320 here. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get that hood refined enough for primer. I like my primer to sit in a 320 grit scratch instead of 180. That way that the primer here can shrink into something much finer. You don't see it down the road once the sun has come out. Now this is a 2K urethane surfacer primer and shot out of a P500 to Eastwood P500, and I will put about 2 coats on. I'm just showing you the one now, and I'm putting it on kind of heavy, and the reason why I'm doing the whole hood is because it's got pits all over from top to bottom, and that will make for a nice even surface. Now we're going to be using our guide coat here, which is just black spray paint, and I'm using a 320 grit. Now the 320 grit I like is because it's not too aggressive, but it's enough to flatten out. And I'm using long strokes here, using my long block, using a cross hatch pattern as much as I can, which is an X pattern. Now that guide coat will sit at the low spots or any of those scratches within the panel, like this little low spot right here. Now don't be afraid. If you need to, you can always go back and reprime. This is the time to get it nice and straight. I don't want you to look at your panel after you paint it and wish you spent a little bit more time in the prepping stage. And that's why they say prepping is key to a beautiful paint job. So now I'm putting my guide coat back on to those 320 grit scratches. Now a 320 grit scratch by hand is much more aggressive than a 320 grit with a DA. So I'm going over it right now with a 400 grit, and I'm just getting it ready for our sealer coat. And this is why I love sealer, because I can do 400, seal it, base and clear. I don't have to worry about base coats sinking into this primer. It's just going to absorb it so much. So taking my time and just getting everything nice and tidied up. And now I'm ready to get it into the booth. But once again, we are cleaning, clean. Now you got my degreaser, I got my scuffing pad, and I'm just getting all those dirt out of the crevices, power washing it down, making sure that my panel is 100% clean before it hits the booth. Now, one thing I do like to do is I do like to dry my panels. We don't know what is in the water, chlorine, all that. If you let it sit on your panel, that can cause contamination, believe it or not. So take as many steps possible to eliminate any problems down the road. Now rolling it into the booth using the Easy Flex. We just picked this up, Easy Flex stand. This stand kicks butt. It's awesome. Really makes things easy. Now I'm using my water-based cleaner here. I actually use a water-based and a solvent-based cleaner. I'm just showing you the water-based here. Now it's very important to keep on wiping it until it's dry. Don't let it evaporate on the panel. Same thing like the water from before. Just keep on wiping it. Now this is our red Colorbuild Sealer. I cannot say enough about how awesome this sealer is. So we're ready to spray it, and it is a tintable sealer, so there's different colors that you can use. Now you can't necessarily take primer and tint it to make it work. And we can see with the coverage here, we're using the Iwata WBX LV and it is just putting it on nice and smooth. I'm probably around 75% overlap at maybe 26 psi. And what this is going to do for me is it's going to give me a great foundation for my base coat right here. All right, so it's already the same color, which is awesome. Now I'm only going to have to put like 2 coats on. I'm only going to show you one here. So we're following the same technique. Keep it moving, nice and steady. Pressure is still around the same, 26 psi. Now, pressure always varies from compressor to regulator to paint booth to paint booth. It's always going to be a little bit different, but this is how it should look after base coat. See, it's got somewhat of a shine, like a sheen. That means it's smooth, okay? Moving along to the clear coat stage, we're using the LPH 400 right around 27 psi, using a Sikkens 2-pack slow clear. I always prefer slow, just takes a little bit longer to dry, but the end result is a much higher retention of gloss than of a faster product. And I will tell you, this hood came out looking beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Few little nibs here and there, not to worry. Stay tuned to the end. I'll show you how to buff this whole thing up, make it look good. So we're moving on to the fenders. Now you gotta ask me, Brian, why don't you do everything at the same time? I like to paint in parts. This car just kind of stood on the back burner, okay? And we are doing the fenders because we're doing it for blend, and they've been painted before. They got some scratches and pits. So right here, pretty much what I'm using is a 320. Okay, I'm getting that foreground, that area where the bumper meets. I'm getting that all sanded down and smoothed out. And just another reason why I like to paint in parts, the parts come out cleaner. I don't want to drag this NSX into the booth and get overspray where I don't want it to be. I like to paint parts off the car. That's just the type of person I am, the type of painter I am. This car didn't need to go. We had this car probably like 3 weeks, right? So what I do is I save the color. I save all the colors so all the parts get the same exact color. Mix up a whole bunch in the beginning. So what you see me doing right now is I'm using a K600 on the scuffed areas. Those areas are blend areas. And this area won't get any primer, okay? This is just scuffing for adhesion for down the road. And this is our primer. Now it's the same primer as a sealer, but it's mixed differently. So now it has the additives in it so that it can build a little bit and it can sand well. And you can see it goes on a little bit wet. And I have primer right where I need it. So I won't need to seal this one because now it's good to go. It dries the next day. I'm using a K600 here, Eagle abrasives. And it's a prepping system, the K-Grit. It's to get you to paint quick. And that's exactly what we're doing here. So K600, smoothing it out, going into the blend area where our primer edge stops. Now I can use a DA with the interface pad because there's not a lot of blocking. There's no Bondo, there's none of that. Now we're moving on to the final sand of our blend area. Now we'll use the same grit to go over our blend area and our primer. I got K800 on it now. And we want to make sure that our blend area where it meets the door, we don't want to break through that area because the fender matches the door, right? So since the fender matches the door, we're not going to put color there. This is actually K800. So I'm doing this by hand, right? I'm doing it by hand because we can't control what the DA is doing all the time on the edge. If we burn through this edge, we have to paint the door, pretty much, unless we have an amazing color match. But you always want to blend. We're using our interface pad here, our hand pad with the K800, and just getting all those little areas. Take the extra time necessary to just get it right? What's the big rush, right? Sit back and listen to the sounds of this beautiful NSX getting into the booth. Man, that sound gets me every single time. So it's a real joy to have this in the booth. So we're ready to blend the fenders. Now we're blending the fenders because we want that hood to match. Now what I do is, I told you guys before, I mix up a whole bunch of paint and then I take some of that paint and I put it on the last coat of every single thing I paint. Alright, so let's say I have to mix up some other paint. Let's say I put a drop in more of something else like a different, like too much of one toner, I don't have to worry because I go for the same exact PPS cup that's in my hand right now, and I just put that on the last coat. All right, and I know that I'm good because that is the same exact color that is on the last coat for the bumper, the hood, the fenders, side skirts, whatever it might be. That way I know I can paint this car in sections and I don't have to worry. Moving across to the clear now, we're using the LPH 400 and just showing the one coat. Now, it might look a touch orange peely. This clear coat does flow out, so I try not to put it on too wet right away because I know what it's capable of doing in just a few minutes. See, sometimes we want to put it on so glossy right away, but we have to remember that these clears have self-leveling properties in them. They're going to flow out. They're actually going to look better in some cases than what we just sprayed just moments before. So getting it all blended up and unmasking it was a real joy to see this car in a booth. It's the first time, or maybe second time we've had a car like this in a booth, but never really painting any panels, just parts. And so that's the extent of the car being in a booth. 2 fenders, no hood, no bumper, everything's off the car. We don't have to worry about overspray, no issues, okay? Now it's time to move on to all the accessories and all those little parts that we need to make this build complete. I always is starting off with my degreaser. Before I touch any of these parts, degrease. You ask me why you get fish eyes? It's because you're not taking the time necessary to clean your parts. You're going to start sanding grime into your parts and expect no fish eyes? Come on. This is 180. Now I'm going to do the whole bumper. This car's got a lot of miles on it. It's got a lot of pitting. It's got a lot of road debris. So I can't just do one area. So I got my prepping pad once again, 180 grit. I'm taking it down. The whole thing is going down. If I need to go down to plastic, I'm okay with that. All right. We just want to level off all those pits. And you'll know while you're looking at them that when the pit levels off and you can't see it anymore in the clear coat, then it's time to stop. Now this is a 320. Change over to 320 and an interface pad here because now what I'm doing is I'm getting it ready for our primer. And like I told you guys earlier on the hood, I don't want my primer to shrink into a 180. Oh, look at I'm cleaning again. Are you surprised? I'm not. All that dust and all the debris from sanding gets into the paint. Get it off. Now these side skirts were not fun. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't like fiberglass. Even though it's a better quality kit, in fiberglass there's always going to be some pitting. They never fit 100%. So what I'm doing here is 320 once again. And I'm just making sure that I can scuff it up enough for that primer to get on it. Now, I do like to prime my side skirts first so I can see where all the pits and all that stuff is because to the naked eye, it's just a little bit tough to locate. So if you get a good coat of primer on there, you can kind of see what you're working with, and it kind of seals everything in. You know, on these fiberglass kits, you'll find some stray fiberglass strands. You'll find a lot of cracking, pitting. I think these manufacturers just leave it up to people like us to finish it off. I don't know. This is the bottom half of the NSX bumper. It's a 2-part bumper. I didn't really show it to you too much. But yeah, again, just using my 2K urethane surfacer primer. This mixes 3:1:1. This is a Lessenol product. And I'm putting it on there. This is a thicker primer, right? The purpose of the primer is to be sanded. The sealer does not sand. The primer is your last step before your paint, right? So when this goes on, you're going to put 2 to 3 coats on. Read your technical data sheets. Don't ask me how to mix it because all primers are different. So when this goes on, it's going to give you that build that you need to smooth it out. It's going to bridge the gap over all those pits, plastic, all that stuff. So once again, guide coat, right? And now what I'm doing is my 320. I'm not going to block it out. It doesn't need to be blocked out. I know that because when I was sanding it, it's not like the hood. It's good, all right? Only small areas you might need to use a block, but not the top half. Okay, so 320 it, got my interface pad, gonna wash it off once more because now we're getting ready to paint it. Degreaser one more time, scuff pad, wipe it down, wash it down, and then it's ready for the booth. You've done all the steps. It doesn't take too much. Now hopping back into the booth, the headlight covers are making their first appearance. So we're sealing them with our red Colorbuild. Same exact color, same exact technique. Everything is the same. We don't want any variations in our color. Now, one reason why I do love sealing is because, once again, this part was in 320. I didn't need to take it from 320 to 600 and all that and make it nice and smooth. Plus, any of those burn throughs we have, sealer goes right over it and it kind of bridges the gap, right? It gives us a beautiful surface for paint. Now, there will be in some cases that you don't need sealer, but in most cases, I love to use sealer, and I love to use a W400 LVWBX because it shreds the sealer. Believe it or not, your sealer gun is the most important gun, because if you're not putting it on smooth, right, the base coat that you're seeing right now lay down is not going to be smooth either. It's just going to fall in to whatever is already on the surface, right? That's why I think its primer gun is so important too, because if you say, oh, I'm going to sand it anyway, right? But can you imagine if you had smooth primer every time and it didn't take as much smoothing out? So that's why I say good quality tools will get you a good quality paint job easier, okay? I did go with the W400 for my base coat here, and only 2 coats about. That's all I really needed. Same as the hood, same as the fender. Let's look at the same sheen. It's ready for clear. Now, once again, when this clear goes on, it looks a bit like it's got a little bit of orange peel, and this is the first coat. Don't worry about having orange peel on the first coat. Don't try to slam it on the first coat. I got the LPH 400. We all know this gun is more than capable of giving us a beautiful finish. Now, I am using the diaphragm regulator I water sent over, and it actually is very good. It holds the pressure so you don't get that sudden burst of pressure when you go to spray, and I'm really loving it. Now, we're only showing you 1 coat of clear here, but I have about 10 to 15 minutes between coats. Now, don't ask me how long you wait. What am I going to tell you? Go to your technical data sheets, check out your product, type it in the internet, TDS. It will come up on a PDF file, and you'll learn all the directions of what you need to do, including flash time, fluid tip size, what type of gun, all that stuff is right there in the technical data sheets. Now, this is the result you'll get if you read those technical data sheets. You have a much better chance of having a nice and smooth finish with very minimal buffing. I don't even think I buffed these parts. There's really no reason to. They came out like glass. Now, you'll see John here struggle a little bit to get that tire off. These a little bit bigger wheels in the back here, but we're moving on to our test fitting. Now, I will tell you, test fit, test fit, test fit, test fit. I am using Lord Fusor 100 EZ epoxy, and that's a little yellow epoxy that you might see at the edges here. Make sure you're drilling all your holes when you do fiberglass. These fiberglass kits come, and I promise you, you think that they're ready to bolt on, but they're not. You need to do many test fits. So here was one of many test fits, a lot more test fits off camera, just to get it to the point. Now, it does use the OEM fasteners, but there are areas that you need to drill holes to get it right. Now, I told you earlier, right? You might need to reprime, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. Something like this might take 2 or 3 coats of primer to get right. And it's not that you don't know what you're doing, right? It's just that it needs that more of a build surface. You need to keep building the surface up, filling, building, just so you can get it to the quality of an OEM part. Now, I'm going to show you guys a little bit of magic here to keep this thing moving along. We have our side skirts in here ready to go, and with some video editing, they are all painted beautiful. Same procedure, same sealer, same base, same clear. We know we have the same exact result every single time. Consistency is the name of the game. I'm going to show you guys these beautiful door sill panels that will complete the kit, and we're ready to get this thing all bolted up. Now, back in the shop, we're ready to polish. Now, this is one of the best systems for sanding. I'm using a Tolecut system by Eagle Abrasives. It's actually got a 1200 grit little sandpaper sticky pad on this hard block, and it's going to level off any of those little dust nibs that you might have. It's also great for removing runs. So once I go around the whole hood and level off those little spots, then I'll take a 1500 grit. Now, the 1500 grit right here is 1500 grit Buffex K1500. That is a K system. It's proprietary to Eagle Abrasives. Okay, and I'm going to go around and I'm going to take my 1200 grit scratches that we see here, and I'm going to refine them with the 1500. Now, I like to go over those spots first so I don't lose track of them.
Now, I will tell you that this is not a normal system or normal procedure to do on regular collision cars. This car has been cut flat. They come flat from the factory, and it's not something I'm able to get out of the gun. So I want to make sure it looks perfectly even, beautiful. And what I'm doing here is just going over the whole thing now with 1500 just to level off any of that little peel, anything that might be in the clear coat that is taking away from the smoothness and the slickness of the actual finish itself. So I'll 1500 the whole entire thing, and I've only got about maybe 2 pieces of sandpaper in this whole hood. Now we're moving on to the K2000. So we've gone from 1500 to K2000, and now we're refining the 1500 scratch. This is a totally dry system. All right, that's the one cool thing about Eco Abrasives is all their sandpaper, it's designed to be dry, so they don't have that mess of water all over the place, and it cuts. It cuts, like I said, about 2 pieces for 1500, 2 pieces for 2000, and now we're at the K3000. So we're stepping it up about 500, you know, difference of 500 between the grits. And you really could stop at 3000. This is where Eco Abrasive stops, and you could buff this out no problem at all. So just going over the whole entire hood once more, take the time necessary to do this. This is the most important stage. This is 8000 by 3M. So since this is kind of like a show car, we're going to make buffing a little bit more easier. So what the 8000 will do is we'll refine that 3000 even more. Now you have to use this wet because it's Trizact, and it will actually leave like a little bit of a shine that makes it that much easier for buffing. Like I said, I only really do this on big panels, nice cars. We're taking it a step further. I did this same process on the fenders, and obviously the hood. The bumper was clean, the side skirts are clean, all the other panels were clean. But this is the focal point of the whole car. So we're going over it with the compound and using a 3M system, the perfected system. And the cool thing is with the perfected system, it comes with the compound and the pad. They all pair up. So the compound and the pad are together, and then you'll have the polish like you see here with a special pad. We got my inspector over there checking me out. Doesn't know a thing about paint, but he's still my inspector. And so they're all together, right? So this is the second step. This is polishing, giving it that shine. Now this is the ultra fina. This is the third step. This is going to remove any of those fine swirl marks that you might see in the sun. And once you wipe this off, man, you could not spray paint that looks as good as a wet sanded or sanded finish and polish. There's nothing like it at all. So we're getting down to the final parts of this build. We're getting it all assembled, and I will tell you, these bumpers are not like your traditional bumpers that are just put together with just a few clips and screws. Let's say they are very well put together, but there are a lot of components that go into them, so you need to pay attention when you're taking them apart, because by the time you're putting them back together, you might forget. I mean, these bumpers are heavy. They have a whole metal chassis that kind of goes into it, or metal brackets, and by the time you go to put them on, they've got to at least weigh about, I would say, like at least 50 pounds. So it's always good to have an extra hand. And that's what John comes in for. John loves these NSXs. He knows about these NSXs, and he's always there to help me out. So the customer wanted to add a carbon fiber lip, and that's just what we did. It really completes the look. The whole front end refresh came together. When you see the final result of how it looks, it is night and day, especially in person. Just looking at the front end vehicle, it's really appreciation for these older cars, bring them into the new era nice and clean. And if you pay close attention to the video, you'll notice that we have a few NSXs in the shop. A lot of guys will come to us to make sure that their paint or their engine work is flawless, and that's just what we do over here. So finishing up this job, we're getting the rocker panel on, and this is a step where you want to make sure it just pops right on. All the prior work will enable this side skirt to go on effortlessly. That's why your test fits mean so much. But that's gonna wrap it up for this video. I hope you guys learned a lot. I'll let you check out the final shots in the ending here. And guys, this is Brian from Paint Society reminding you, don't overthink it. It's just paint.